Welcome to the Gamut of Performance Podcast, episode 67. Before we start the show, I just want to take a moment and tell you all about my new book, The Gamut of Performance, The Young Strength and Conditioning Coach's Guide to Success. This book has been a work in progress, but it is finally complete and it's available on Amazon in the book section. It's right now it's only in a print copy. Decided not to go Kindle just because the format gets screwed up and I feel like it takes away from a lot of the author's work, so I don't think you'll be able to get the full effect. The purpose of the book, it's just for young strength and conditioning coaches. I think everyone can take a little bit from it, but it's specifically geared at the young strength conditioning coach. Like when you're starting in the field, you have no idea basically how to get in the field when you're on the outside looking in. So this book is just kind of a snapshot. It tells aspiring strength and conditioning coaches basically what they should know of in each different area. So a bunch of different areas, right? It gives you a quick snapshot of what you should know in those areas to either maximize your time or to attain an internship position or even a GA position or even an assistant position. I don't really think it matters. I think it exists to help people get to where they want to go. Okay. Each chapter is written by a different author that is very educated in all of strength and conditioning, but specifically in the area that they also have chose to write a chapter on. I don't want to keep you super long, but just to give you a quick overview of the table of contents, right? The first chapter is on education, basically what you need to know, should I go to school, certifications, things like that. The second chapter is going to be on coaching presence and relationship building. Third chapter on assessment. Fourth on programming and exercise selection and rationale. Fifth on warming up. Sixth on plyometrics and power development. Seventh on speed conditioning and energy system development. 8 on transfer of training. 9 on athlete monitoring. 10 on presenting yourself, and that's like application materials. 11, it's called Life is a Business. That's basically, the business of strength and conditioning, if we dive into a little bit more. And then 12 is kind of some other areas like how the field of strength and conditioning can change your life and where it can take you, right? So that's just a quick overview. Later on, we're going to dive deeper into author spotlights, right? You've heard from some of them, but I think it's important for you to be introduced to some of the ones that you haven't heard of. So thank you for listening to this, and let's kind of get right into the show. Coach Candice, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to kind of jump on here and talk a little bit of shop. For the listeners at home, will you tell us a little bit about your background, your motivation, and kind of where you are currently?
Yes, I was actually born and raised in Kentucky, so I'm a mountain girl at heart.
Okay.
My dad was a minister. My mom was a teacher. So I kind of got brought up in a very servant, leader-driven home. So it's no surprise I kind of became a coach.
Yeah.
We moved around a lot growing up because my dad would take different churches. He poured into them for 3 years, and we kind of moved.
Yeah.
So I kind of found my stability and kind of who I was through athletics.
Yeah.
Because no matter where we moved to, athletics was always there.
Mm-hmm.
And so through that, what I've noticed is since I was about 11 or 12, I started writing practice plans.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I'm like, well, I can make this practice better.
Mm-hmm.
But then what I discovered was I was really just writing out what we should run, body weighted circuits. I didn't know what I was doing. So from a very young age, I think through, especially a lot with my dad, kind of took on that. And then kind of grew, and it actually, I went to college, I played basketball. Everybody kind of has the D1 dream. So I'm like, okay, I'll go to the school for a year, I'll transfer out.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my mindset when I went into college, because I went to Berea College. It's a very interesting school. If you don't know anything about it, I would definitely highly recommend looking it up. You're all required to have a job.
Okay.
That's actually where I ran into Corey Schlesinger.
Okay.
We played basketball in college together, so we were both freshmen.
Wow. Okay.
He's actually the one that kind of got me started in it. So we didn't have a strength coach for women's basketball. So I started training with the men's team, and so Corey and I became friends. And then he actually went off and did an internship our junior year and came back and was like, Candice, you can get paid for this. And I'm like, what? So I call up Coach Reed at Wake Forest. This was August, mind you. And I'm like, can I come intern for you next summer?
Uh-huh.
And as full-time coaches now, you're like, who is this kid calling me in August wanting to come to
Yeah.
And so I'm sure he thought I would go away, but I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I ended up going down there, the summer and came back. I bought a bar from bumpers, and Corey and I were literally our strength coaches for our teams our senior year because we didn't have any. So it ended up, I went into the school thinking I can't wait to get out of it.
Yeah.
And then it ended up that the school had changed my life because I met a man that kind of led me to the profession I'm in today.
Yeah.
And through there, I went off to the Citadel, or actually I went to Texas first.
Okay.
And ran into Coach Mabe and Coach Madden.
Okay.
And I was only going to be there for the summer.
Yeah.
And Coach Madden's like, because I was supposed to go play basketball in Greece.
Okay.
And he's like, Candice, do you want to go overseas and maybe play for a year or two, or do you want to be a director by 28?
Yeah.
I'm like, ooh, I want to be a director by 28.
Yeah.
And this man is the president of the CSTCA. Maybe he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ended up staying. I didn't go overseas and play. I was there for a year. And then I landed a GA ship at the Citadel.
Okay.
And I got to work. Do you know Danielle Boucher?
I do, yeah.
Oh my gosh, he's amazing. Man changed my life. At that point in my life, I really needed someone to pour into me from a professional standpoint.
Yeah.
And he did a phenomenal job of it.
Mm-hmm.
In every aspect of the way, between being a mentor, being a boss, being a friend.
Yeah.
Opening his home up to, I was 21 at the time.
Yeah.
Him and his wife. If you are a strength coach and you want to develop when you're young, you go to Danielle Boucher.
Yeah.
That man is phenomenal. And then through there, I actually went to conferences and I stalked Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of Kaz Kazadi and I was like, I'm just going to follow him around at conferences. I'm going to wind up talking to Althoff any chance I get.
Yeah.
And so literally I sat with him at the big, dinner, the big master's dinner.
Yeah.
And I purposely did it. I pretended like it was an accident, but I didn't. It wasn't. And what's funny is I wrote on my paper at that, I went and watched him present, and I wrote down, be a Baylor before I'm 30. I think I was 22 at the time.
Yeah.
And literally 2 months later, I got a phone call. I thought it was literally one of my coworkers pranking me.
Yeah.
It was Andrew Althoff. And so I ended up going to Baylor, and I was there for 7 years. I got to work with some phenomenal people like Andrew Althoff, Chris Roof, Kaz Kazadi, Keith Caton. The list goes on and on.
Yeah.
You got Adam Davis. I have been so blessed on everybody I've come in contact with.
Uh-huh.
And I ran into some great sport coaches along the way.
Yeah.
This small mountain girl from Kentucky got to go be part of a Power 5, just powerhouse. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And I was there for 7, and then I landed myself down in Cajun country.
Okay.
I don't know if you know anything about South Louisiana, but it's a different world.
Yeah, that's what I hear, yeah.
The food is great. The humidity is insane, but the people here are phenomenal.
Okay.
I've been here for 2 years, and we're doing some fabulous things down here. I've got an amazing staff I get to work with.
Uh-huh.
I've got administration that supports us to the T on anything that we want.
Yeah.
So right now I'm actually the assistant athletic director for athletic performance here.
Uh-huh.
I oversee nutrition. I oversee athletic performance plus all the facilities.
Mm-hmm.
We have literally what we've done with this place in 2 years is attributed to our AD.
Yeah.
We went from having no training table to we took our own weight room and now we have one.
Yeah.
That's just athletes only.
Mm-hmm.
What our external staff has done to grow that place, it's amazing.
That's huge.
And then we went from having no budget to $1.5 million budget so we can feed scholarship and non-scholarship kids lunch and dinner.
Wow.
I know, right?
That's huge,
crazy.
yeah.
The kids love it.
Yeah.
And plus it also built us with the community, you're feeding the kids and they get breakfast, so everybody's on a breakfast plan.
Okay.
Plus that. So right there, you're already feeding someone 1% just because of the food.
Yeah.
There's nobody else in our conference that gets to do that. We got to hire 3 full-time dietitians. We took our staff from 3 full-time for Olympics to 5. We have an Olympic director now and
That's
a director
so
of basketball.
Yeah.
So those are the things we got going on down here.
Yeah.
I'm extremely, extremely blessed to come into. We got a brand new AD whenever I got here.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually the one that brought me in.
Okay.
All of this couldn't have happened without that. So right now it's a great time to be a kid.
Yeah, those are some huge things because even just something as small as training tables, right? I think it's something overlooked, and you kind of mentioned that. That's a big difference when you're chasing a championship, right? Because if you're not recovering from just the food aspect, that's a big deal,
I agree 100%. I feel as if sometimes, I mean, don't get me wrong, as a street coach, or, that's what we call ourselves sometimes, we think we're the most important thing, and we're not. To me, we're merely a puzzle piece that makes up this huge puzzle of a student athlete. You've got kids from all over the world coming here. We've got our foreign population is so high. These kids are coming to a culture to where, for one, the food is different here anyway. For two, they're not in their home country, so the food changes. So if you don't educate and show these kids how to do that right, and then on top of that, at some point, sport will end. And then you've got 70, 80 more years to live. And now we've got 3 full-time dietitians that can teach them how to fuel themselves the rest of their lives.
Wow.
I mean, you can change a family tree within that.
Yeah, that's really big.
We're very fortunate.
Yeah. And then even the other aspect of being able to kind of grow your department from 3 to 5, that's huge, because now each team is getting a level of like personal touch, that they wouldn't have been able to get before. So that's another huge factor,
And that's it. What we wanted to do was build consistency. A lot of times what you'll see at mid-majors is the turnover is high. You get a lot of people, I call them polo chasers. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we've all been there. Who doesn't want to be at a school where there's millions to play with, Power 5? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But then when you get to some of these schools, the turnover is just high. So in our minds, we're like, how do we eliminate that? And we discovered you got to promote people from within. If they feel they can't grow within a department, they're going to leave. And through title changes come obviously compensation, so that helps. And then it also sets them up so when they do apply for that next job, they have the skills and the time that it shows that, hey, I was an assistant director or I was a director, so I'm ready to take that next step. Because I mean, you can't keep people forever, and you don't want to.
Exactly.
The more you can get people out to spread what you're building where you're at, to me, that's attributed to can you repeat it is if you're successful. Not if you just keep it all here.
Exactly.
And we kind of want to spread this. I mean, I took what I learned at Baylor and the Citadel in Texas, and we brought it here. And so hopefully our people continue to kind of grow that in their own way wherever they go.
And I can kind of attest to that, right? From coming from a mid-major in Appalachian State, like we only had 2 full-time at the time I was there. So you can imagine like how much work that is for us. And then in terms of like titles and things like that, there's just not a lot of room for it, So I can completely attest to that. But no, that's really interesting. And we're going to dive a little bit more into that, but let's kind of shift focus a little bit more on and shed the light back on you, right? So one of your big passions or like hobbies or outside of work things is boxing, correct?
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Like, how'd you get into that, coming from basketball, right? Coming from strength training, and then now you're a boxer. Like, how does that happen?
Oh, my goodness. I think as a strength coach, when you hang up whatever shoes you were wearing or ball you're playing with, you kind of like, okay, how do I continue to be competitive? It's just in you. I mean, I think we've all kind of dabbled into powerlifting or the Olympic lifting or CrossFit or whatever avenue. Like some people go and they rollerblade. I don't know. They just try to ultimate frisbee. I mean, I can't say you would ever catch me doing that. But I tried powerlifting. I did all of it. I had a back surgery. And I don't blame that on the powerlifting by any means. It was definitely my own stupidity not listening to my body. But you live and you learn. I mean, it's made me a better coach. But then along the way, like when I was at the Citadel, obviously it's a military school. There was a guy there. He actually did some MMA and boxing. So we were like hitting it. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I actually bloodied my knuckles up. And when I went on my interview for Baylor, they're like, oh my gosh, you boxing? Like, it made me look tough. And then what I didn't know, lo and behold, is when I got to Baylor, Coach Kazkazadi actually boxed.
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, ooh, this isn't good. But he would invite me out, and it was his own like kind of therapeutic time. And at the time, I'm young, I'm 23. I don't even know any of that. I'm just like grind it out, like go. But what I discovered is that was his time for himself. And he actually extended it out. He would bring a guy in, we go to the indoor, and he's like, "Hey, Candice, do you want to come box with me?" And at first, I'm like, "Well, this will just add to my resume. I look really cool, so yeah, I'll come box." But then what I learned through that is you have to be so in the moment when you're boxing. And it just so I kind of started with that, and then, you know how life goes. You got mountains, you got valleys, and I found myself in a valley, and I'm like, okay, I need to get myself out of this. I've obviously thrown my back out, got a knee, What can I do to train that's different but still competitive?
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I remember I like boxing for cause.
Yeah.
So I started boxing more, and then it turned into every day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was like, wow, I'm actually okay at this.
Uh-huh.
And then I'm like, what if, and I'm 28, I think at the time, like, what if I do this competitively?
Yeah.
And everybody's like, Candice, no way, you're too old. And so right then and there, you can't tell me something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm like, done. And what's crazy is I show up to like 3 fights, but nobody's there. Amateur world is so different like that.
Okay.
And so I get a little discouraged. Because at amateurs, you just wait. You show up, you weigh in, and then you see if anybody else shows up.
Yeah.
Nobody showed up.
Wow.
So I'm like, oh my gosh, a cutting weight for me. I normally would walk around at like 160, 165. I would weigh in at 152.
Oh gosh.
I didn't know anything about weight cuts, so I just hydrated myself, right? Starved myself.
Yeah.
I was not a pleasant person.
Yeah.
So anyway, I finally take the job at UL, and it's crazy. I'm here for like 6 months. I can't find a boxing gym.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I have a Bell's palsy attack. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
This stress is getting to me. Like, I've got to get my outlet again. So I picked up boxing again, and I told myself, gold gloves, I'm fighting. And then I had my first fight.
Yeah.
I think not last March, but the March before. And I've just kind of gone at it ever since.
That is awesome.
I know. It's kind of crazy when everybody asks me, like, why do you box? I'm like, which reason do you want to know?
Yeah. Okay. No, but that's honest, though, and I like that, you know. But how important do you think it is to have something outside of strength and conditioning, you know, because the job can be stressful, as we all know.
Oh, 100%. I'm the biggest advocate for that. I actually did a talk at one of the play labs, and I was talking to people about you have got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
I've been doing this for about 12 years now. I've had back surgery, knee surgery, and a Bell's palsy attack.
Yeah.
I had to go get an EKG done.
Wow.
To check my heart. Like, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm 32.
Yeah.
I have a great life. Why am I so stressed? But I think it's because we want to give and give and give to people, and then we forget to look in the mirror and take care of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I talked about is if you can't love yourself, you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to show and teach these kids to do that?
Yeah.
Or let alone lead a department to do that?
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, I think it doesn't have to be boxing. Like, no, you don't have to go get your face punched in. You could pick up sewing for all I care, but you gotta have an avenue outside of here. To balance it out. It just puts things in perspective, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes you think differently.
For sure.
We're preaching to our kids, get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Push yourself. We're preaching to them, don't freak out when you're in a situation. It's like, when was the last time you laced it up and you were actually on the court?
Yeah.
So to me, it kind of allows you to just be a little fresher.
Yeah.
And get away from everything.
Yeah. And I think that's another point, to get away from everything, right? Because, and the comfort zone thing, because a lot of strength coaches think that, you know, that their outlet is lifting, right? Which kind of you mentioned before, which while that can be an outlet, like you're still in the weight room. Like it's not necessarily removing yourself, you know? So while you think you're, you know, recovering and some self-care, while it can be, it's hard to do that in the place that causes you stress, right?
Oh, 100%.
So, yeah.
And then it opens your eyes up. Like, it's really funny, some of the stuff, because through this, like, I've started to train differently.
Yeah.
It's taken a toll on me, because I had to drop about 10 pounds and walk around at my fighting weight.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do this where I cut weight. I'm not pleasant to be around.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
So my nutrition changed. My training changed. I mean, we know mass moves mass. That goes down. It's just part of it. You can't go and box. You blow your CNS up.
Yeah.
And then you try to come in here and blow it up.
Yeah.
So through that, it's forced me to start trying other people's programs.
Yeah.
Phil Drew does a great job.
Okay.
Brett does a great job.
Yeah.
I've reached out. I've bought some of their programs. And I've literally transferred some of it to the soccer list.
Yeah.
My grip stuff, oh my gosh, 100% with basketball.
Okay.
So it's made me a better coach even through my programming that way.
Yeah. Okay. And then let's talk a little bit about that weight cut, because I think, while it might not be applicable for what we do, I think that's just an interesting topic, right? So will you just talk a little bit about some of the struggles and difficulties and what you found success in on that?
Oh my gosh. Well, like I told you the first time, I was like, what am I going to do? I'm just going to dehydrate myself. I know every bottle I drink is 2 pounds. So.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And then on top of that, the mental abuse I took on my brain.
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness. I couldn't imagine. It made me respect wrestlers and like all these weight sports so much. Like, we'd always talked about it. You read books about it.
For sure.
It's another thing when you go through it.
Yeah.
And somebody told me a joke once, like wrestlers, you have a bus for the people that are weight cutting, and you have a bus for the people that aren't. And I get it, it's because nobody wants to be around you. It's just plain and simple. So, then another thing I tried is I was like, okay, my best friend's a dietitian. She used to tell me all sorts of things, and of course I don't listen. I do things the hard way. So finally, it really made me reach out to the dietitian people around me. Like, there's a science to this. Like, help me. Because what I'm doing is not smart, and it's killing my body. So it came down to I just changed up some of my food. That mentality of eat whatever I want because I got to get thick and lift heavy. Like, I had to kind of lose that. And I started eating a lot of red meats. I started doing a ton of greens. Spinach, my roommate teases me all the time because I'll even go on the road with spinach.
Really?
You'll see me. Oh my gosh. I'll have a whole carton of spinach. Like, I think I put some in a baggie to take on a plane, and security pulled it. And they're like, "What is this?" And I'm like, it's spinach. Like, I promise.
You can try it.
So just like that mentality, I actually tried the RP strength diet. I was like, okay, I'm seeing all these results. People are saying they're dropping it, but they're still staying healthy and they're able to move. So I tried that out and I love it. Now, what I do now is not to a T on it, but I set up my base pretty much like that, especially around fight time. Like, I have a fight in 40 days. It's the Eastern qualifier that'll qualify you for the Olympic trials. So you finish in the top 2, you get an invite to the trials. So I got to make sure I go in. If anything, maybe a pound under, but I'm going to be a solid 152 for that. So, I tried that out. I ended up loving it. It works for me. So I guess the biggest thing is, as athletes, you just really have to try some things out and figure out what works for you. Not everybody's going to fit in a box. It just won't work that way.
For sure. Okay. And I think that's kind of a perfect transition into now training like on the job, right? So what's kind of your training philosophy, and how do you kind of approach working with the teams that you haven't worked with in the past and that you currently work with?
Oh, that's something that changes so much. I think as you evolve as a coach, like, especially like your younger years, like, it really just, whoever your mentor is, you kind of latch onto that. So when I left weight, I was live and die by the bar. I was like Olympic lifts all the way, body-weighted movements. Like, I was obsessed with chin-ups, obsessed. Like, oh my gosh, I wanted to clean every day, you know? And anything beyond that, I was like, you're wrong.
Sounds like a lot of coaches,
and then, like, if you would have asked me about platform-based, like, and then I go to Texas, and, you know, I run into Jesse Ackerman and all of them, and Coach Madden and Coach Maeve, and they're all three so different. So I'm like, I have these 3 people I'm looking up to, but all their stuff is so different. Like, Jesse's got that West Side, like, powerlifting background, which I knew nothing about, but I'm like, he's so cool. Like, he puts his hoodie up, he puts his music on. The dude also is a genius. Like, I want to be just like him. And so I'm like, okay, Dave Tate, I'm going to read all about Dave Tate, you know, stuff like that. And then I got to where I'm like, ooh, powerlifting school. And then I roll over to the Citadel, and it's kind of a mix between everything, but then I found out about the tier system. And I'm like, I'm going to program everything by the tier system, like house is the man. And so it's just funny, like, and then I get to Baylor, and then, oh my gosh, I'm surrounded by 1,000 people I look up to, and I'm like, can I do everything they're doing? And so I think along the way, you just find what works, but then I would say my philosophy is based off of trust. I have to have these athletes trust me that I'm going to keep them healthy and what I'm doing is in their best benefit. I have to have the coaches trust that I understand it's their team. They're the CEOs, and I'm there to help their company be successful. And then off that, when you're training a kid, they're athletes. They need to move well. They've got to be able to move their body weight. If they can't push and pull their body weight, nothing else matters. Because they don't have control of themselves. And I think especially for women, there's something so powerful about being able to push and pull your body weight, because then no one can control you. Like, and then everything just kind of opens up from there. And I think when it comes to stuff on the field or the court, like, if a kid doesn't know how to stop, like, oh my gosh, if they don't know how to accelerate or have the strength to do that, I mean, you're setting them up for an injury.
Oh my gosh,
all these kids that specialize so soon. And they're, I mean, sometimes being at Baylor, like, I worked with every sport at Baylor outside of tennis and basketball. And you would get these 5-star recruits sometimes for softball and soccer and some of these, but they could do phenomenal things on their playing field, but then you ask them to do a broad jump or a vert, and I'm like, oh wow. Like, so I always break it down to, like, it's like trying to dunk before you do a layup. Like, so in my mind, kind of leading into also like injury prevention, you got to keep it to the basics. Make sure they can move well, and then you advance accordingly.
Yeah.
And then you got to like look at your resources. Sometimes you'll have everything in the world. You have all the technology in the world. You can do all sorts of energy system training and recovery modalities. But if you're in a place where you don't have it, you got to adjust.
Yeah.
If you've got a coach that doesn't want it, then it doesn't matter what you know or what you believe.
Yeah.
They're not going to use it.
Yeah.
So I think the one thing I've learned is like you got to be adaptable, and they got to trust you. And then from there, you can find different ways to do things.
I like that. Yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. And then even kind of pulling on that thread a little bit more, like having worked with so many sports at Baylor, and then throughout your career, having worked with all the sports you've worked with, including football, like have you seen yourself, did you always see yourself working with like a basketball or a soccer like you do now?
Well, like I said, like I wanted to be a basketball coach.
Okay.
And then I realized like, oh my gosh, I hate watching film. And I don't care if I ever run this drill again in my life.
Yeah.
I think it's just because I've been doing it since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And finally I was like, okay. And I go to Wake and I trained with basketball and football. And I'm like, first time I ever worked with football, I was like, I'm hooked. Like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And then I go to Texas and I worked with volleyball and soccer and football. And then I go to Citadel and I worked with everybody but basketball.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden I went from like wanting to be this basketball strength coach to being a strength coach of
everything. Yeah. Everything.
Like, Cajun land.
Yeah.
And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because I got to step out of a world and discover like how sick soccer athletes are. Yeah. Like how great it is to work with tennis people. Like how phenomenal even equestrian will get after it. Like you have all these sports that you have this preconceived notion about and then you actually get to work with them. Yeah. And it just changes everything about you. And I would say the one that gives you the most edge, football was the best thing that ever happened to me. The people I met when I worked with, the different, like you get in a football team of 130 guys. Yeah. Think about all the personalities and you're a woman walking into a man's world. You get to learn how to hold yourself, talk, conduct yourself, especially at 21. Like, it really taught me a lot about myself. Yeah. And it made me more relatable. So I think I learned so much from that, but it's so great to be back with basketball. Yeah. But I wouldn't trade any of those experiences at all. Yeah.
No, I really like that. Okay. And then let's dive into a little bit more specific training, right? You touched on it a bit, but like how do your models of training for basketball and soccer, how are they similar? Like what is the, say, let's go speed development, right? How does that look or how does that differ for each of the sports?
It depends on when the kids walk in, obviously. Yeah. We start really basic, like we do a lot of A-cell, D-cell. I'll do a lot of like scramble up from different positions. Yeah. We'll do a lot of like very basic change of direction. Yeah. I may start them with like, okay, we're going to do one cut and then stop. So I'm very much, kind of like a progression type person. Yeah. So a lot of it, if you're looking at the beginning of it, you're going to be like, man, this is very similar. Yeah. But then when you're looking at the yardage or the volume and surfaces that we'll train on, I'll change that up. Yeah. But I'm really big on getting my basketball players off that court. Yeah. It's just such a hard surface for them. And also, they don't get enough sunlight. So sometimes, literally, I'm like, let's go do this outside. Not just because of the surface, but because you need sun. Yeah. It's crazy what some fresh air will do in some sunlight. Exactly. And then with the soccer girls, like some of them, their parents shell out so much money for club teams. Yeah. And then they'll take them to these specialists and they'll do all these cool things, but they'll do such a high volume of it. I'm like, that's not true speed training. Like, I'm glad you've been exposed, but let me teach you like rest and recovery and like let's really make this like let's scale this back. So they'll walk out and they'll be like, Candice, but I'm not crawling out. I'm like, you don't need to be. Like so but it also comes down to kind of what kids I'm working with. Yeah. My girls that are 6'5" compared to the girls that are 5'2" that are 90 pounds. Yeah. Like it'll just kind of depend on that. Like I said, like I used to be, it's got to be this, and now I just realize it depends on what your athlete looks like and how they act, and if they can buy into it. And then you got to add some fun in there. Yeah. I'm big into, okay, how do we make this game-like? Yeah. Or how do we take it? And then how do we make it competitive? Yeah. We're organisms that learn through play, right? Like as a child, that's how we learn, and so why not like take advantage of that and try to teach them, because people are more receptive. We can get into a bunch of science and stuff, but simple facts, like people are more receptive to like game like things. Oh, and 100%. That's when sometimes I'm like, people were always like, oh, what sports specific thing can you do with soccer? And I'm like, okay, I hate that word. I'm like, I respect people that like it, that's fine. But in my mind, I'm like, I mean, what thing can we do as human beings to make sure we move really well? I was like, well, we can do a number of things. Or, well, we don't want to train like football. And I'm like, no. Let's get out of this mindset. Let's train like really great movers. And then, and I'm like, and plus the NCAA takes that out of my hands because we can't use them all. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So in my mind, I'm like, ooh, if I was in the private sector, I could do so much. And I'm like, okay, NCAA, I got you. I respect it. So it kind of takes that aspect out for me a little bit.
Okay. So let's talk about that idea of being in the private sector, right? Because I think that's another interesting thing. And me having moved to the private sector recently, it's just largely unregulated, right? There's anybody that has any sort of sport experience or money that can open a door, right? They can call themselves a coach. So like, what are your thoughts on that a little bit?
I have respect for it. I think what's crazy is a lot of people are like, oh, I want to be a college coach. And then they get in there and they're like, oh my gosh, like we're people's entertainment on holidays. Like, wow, like, okay, I got cool t-shirts and I get to do this, but this isn't everything I thought it was going to be. Or sometimes, it falls down to politics. And sometimes people, and I think it's neat because it gives you an avenue to see what you really like about it, and then you can go specialize. So some people are like, I want to be my own boss. Like, if I'm going to pour this much energy into it, I'm going to go in the private sector and make some money off of it. And to me, I have no problem with that. But what I have a problem with is you got to continue to learn and educate. And I think there's some great people out there that are doing that. But I think just when they're in the private sector, I know you got to make your money to get your, and I understand all that. In the college sector, you don't you don't really have to worry about that as much. But I still think keep it basic with those kids. Like treat them as if they were your son or daughter or your niece or nephew. And I think things would be done maybe a little differently. And then, I don't know, 20 years ago you couldn't put the stuff on Instagram. Would you still be doing it? If Instagram wasn't around. So I think if you can just look at it as I'm going to treat them like my niece or nephew or my son or daughter, then I'm okay with it. I have complete respect as long as you educate yourself and you have your own methods. It doesn't have to be like mine. But just do something that you make sure the kid's getting better and you're not harming them in the next 70 years of their life.
Exactly. I think that's really important, right? And this is a bit of a tangent, but just having the same like knowledge base and the same like approach that you would in like college, right? Everything's got to be like your checks and balances got to be there. Like don't just do stuff just to do stuff. There has to be progressions, and that's where I think it just gets a little muddy because there's a divide of some coaches that are highly intelligent that do that and that are fantastic, and then there's the salesmen that they're salesmen. They're posting stuff all over, and not that that's bad, but if there's no like substance behind it, then it's a different story, and
I think social media gives you such a platform to promote yourself in ways that people before us, they didn't have that. So I think it's such a beautiful thing to use. It's just like anything else in life, you got to do it in moderation.
Exactly.
Make sure what you're putting out there is how you want yourself represented.
I love it. Okay, and then kind of getting back to the training part, right? So we talked a little bit about the speed and a little bit about energy system, right? How does your kind of weight room program kind of compare and contrast between teams?
Like I said, like coming here, it's a little bit different. It's based off of what the coaches want. I'm very, very fortunate here that the coaches are kind of let me do my thing. I've been at a place where it's like, I want nothing but body weight. And I'm like, okay, be the best body weight of people we can ever be.
Exactly.
But honestly, I'm always going to squat people. I don't care how we do it, whether it's goblet squats, whether it's plate squats, whether I'm on a pitch shark, whether I have the bar on my back. We're going to squat. I just am a firm believer in full ranges of motion. I think that helps people. I think that builds some strength. And there's just something about, especially when you bar on your back, you just can't beat that any day. I'm a big component. I still love my Olympic lifts, but I know it doesn't work for everybody. They're not lifters. I get you twice a week. I'm not going to sit there and pull my hair out because you can't get that hinge motion. I'm going to teach you in other ways. So if I got to put a med ball in your hand, let's go. But you're going to be the best darn med ball thrower there is out there.
The adaptability,
Oh, for sure. But then I also think it comes into like what time of the year it is. There's going to be times that we're going to fleet test. We're going to get through. Maybe on test day it isn't so pretty. Maybe I'm not putting that on Instagram. You know what I mean? But there's going to be others that maybe it's the end of season and I don't care about that. The risk versus reward is there. Let's just go hit some stuff with dumbbells. Maybe we go outside with the prowler. So to me, that's what's crazy over the years. I don't have a set thing, but it's crazy if you look at my stuff. There's always a progression of kind of when I implement it.
Yeah.
But it's solely, completely based on, I don't individualize anything,
Yeah.
but what I've noticed, especially with basketball, you have one girl with the knee, one with the shoulder, one that played the entire game.
Yeah.
So everything ends up kind of in its own way being that.
Yeah. No, I get you. And that's completely, honest. That's it right there. So both sports that you kind of work with right now, they're high risk for injury, and you talked about the training and the modality and the progression. Is there any kind of specific injury risk measures that you like to take in terms of like testing, or in terms of like specific muscle groups that you like to like really attack on the front end and the back end, anything like that?
I've done the FMS testing. We've done some other screening protocols. Like, I think everybody's kind of dabbled into something.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I think is when you know your athletes.
Yeah.
Using your eye. I didn't ever understand what that meant.
The coach's eye, yeah.
Kind of did it a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And then I knew what to look for. But even then, like, athletes are great compensators.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy how great they are.
Yeah.
But I think, like, especially, like, you just see ACLs and knees, of course, with soccer. That athlete once, she had 3 ACLs before the age of 15. Like, that's that's disheartening.
Yeah.
I'm like, when you're supposed to be developing, you're recovering from an injury consistently.
Yeah.
So I really believe in, like, ACL and, like, injury prevention from the head down.
Yeah.
You got to have your head in the right space. You got to be doing the right thing the other 20 hours you're not around us, because that can affect it. All the way down to your feet. Like, if their ankles aren't right, your body's a chain.
Yeah.
Something's going to be messed up.
Yeah.
So to me, whenever people are like, what's your ACL protocol?
Yeah.
Because you get that a lot, especially working with soccer. I'm like, everything.
Yeah.
Neck, their teeth,
their
alignment, their shoulders, their hips.
Yeah.
If they're tensed and stressed to their ankles, I'm like, it's everything.
Yeah.
So we have a little routine that we do, and because things can get monotonous, that you got to break it up.
For sure.
There'll be a couple of options that they can choose, and it's everything from like ankle mobility to any type of little jumps to clamshells to any type of shoulders.
Yeah.
I mean, like yoga. There's all sorts of protocols that I have. They'll come in. I'm like, okay, this is what you do, and it'll be like an exercise for each body part.
Yeah.
It may take them about 5 minutes. And I can't promise that that's going to do anything.
Yeah.
But it can give you a little bit more shield to help kind of, prevent it.
Yeah.
But I can't say it's going to fix them.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is, what are these kids doing the other 20 hours they're not big?
Yeah. Yeah,
they fight with their girlfriend the night before, and then they come in and got no sleep, and then they run around they always do, and then all of a sudden, because they're fatigued, they didn't react the right way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many things that go into that.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just pure genetics. Like, we did some genetic testing one time just on our staff alone. And, like, one of the things that I was predisposed to was back injury. We'll go figure I have a back surgery.
Wow, okay.
So, that's where I'm saying, like, you can do all you want, but sometimes it's just the nature of the beast.
It's just in the cards, And what does that genetic testing kind of look like?
We basically just spit into a little thing. They went back and tested it. They gave us some of the markers.
Yeah.
One of them was like, what diet? I can't remember the company we used either. This was when I was back at Baylor.
Okay.
But it was like, what kind of diet would you tend to do? One of mine was like, your body craves carbs.
Yeah.
Another was like, what type of like athlete would you be the best at? It literally broke down all sorts of little markers. I did that about 5 years ago.
Okay.
But I thought it was so crazy because one of the other things that said I was predisposed was cartilage. And then I ended up having to have a knee scope.
Yeah.
Like a couple years later. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy.
Yeah.
But I, for the life of me, cannot remember the name of that company.
That is wild. I didn't even know that was out there. Do you think this is kind of where the field is moving, like more genetic testing like that?
Probably. Like, you go into the private sector, you work with Olympic teams or pro teams. Like, I mean, you just see the performance model that's coming around. I mean, you adapt with the times or die, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think especially, with all the rules changing and all this kind of stuff, with just everything going on, I think you just have to bring your toolbox and make it as diverse as you possibly can.
Yeah,
so
I like
that's one of the things that will help you get the edge. Then, okay.
Then all for it.
It's all about the edge of recruiting at this point.
Yeah, for sure. Because if you don't have good athletes, bottom line, you're not winning, no matter what happens.
Nope.
So,
Yep.
So
and if you don't have a cool locker.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, that's really interesting. Okay, and then kind of switching gears a bit from the training side into more of like the leadership, continuing education side, right? What's your approach in kind of managing staff, and how does that differ kind of from volunteer intern, like all the way up to assistant?
I got been told by Kyle Scazzati when I was there, he does a great job of kind of like teaching you how to run an athletic department. I guess as a CEO versus like as a coach.
Yeah.
And Chris Roof and Andrew Altoff and all of them kind of helped me with this. God help their souls. They helped me when I was a young age. Like,
yeah.
But I guess the biggest thing they taught me is always act like the position you want to be in.
Okay.
Don't act as if the position you're in.
Yeah.
So if you want to be that director, carry yourself like that.
Yeah.
It's just like I said with social media. Like, it's okay if you put it out there, but how do you want to be perceived? Because perception is reality.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I guess with the leadership part and managing, it's like not managing, but realize that we're humans. You're working with people. And not just your athletes that are people, your coaches on your staff that you work with, not for. I hate when people say that. Oh, my staff. I'm like, it's not your staff. Or people. You don't own them.
Yeah.
I think you, and believe me, like, I have not been the greatest leader.
Yeah.
At all times. The reason I can say this is because I've messed up. I messed up several times, but I had great people around me to kind of help pull me back in and show me, like, maybe this is what you should have done.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want to do here is hire people, empower them, allow them to succeed, allow them to fail, just like our athletes do, and then be there as a resource to help support that.
Yeah.
And I hope in return that's what they do for me, because God knows I don't have it all figured out. But I think that biggest thing is empowering people, whether it's an intern, whether it's a full-timer, whether it's a coach, whether it's the facilities guy, like empower these people to do their job at a high level and trust that they'll do it. Yeah. And then if they mess it up, we're humans, we're supposed to, we learn from it and we move on.
Yeah, that's big. Okay, so what do you kind of look for when hiring different positions, right?
The person you are. I have lots of little sayings that I've learned from Baylor, but I really believe that the person you are determines the athlete, the coach, the husband, the wife that you're going to be. Yeah. So don't get me wrong, resumes are great. Yeah. Be detailed in your resumes. Do something that's going to flash off the page. Like, it's 2019. You can buy one online and just redo it. Yeah. Like, there's all sorts of ways. There's no more excuses to send in your typical little black and white, boring one and have spell errors in it. Spell check. Like, my thing is, okay, you get past the resume check where I'm not bored and I haven't fallen asleep. Yeah. The next thing I'm going to do is look you up on social media. Yeah. I'm going to type your name in and I'm going to see what type of person you decide to show the world. Yeah. We had a guy once, he was phenomenal on paper. Yeah. Like, you would just think he was the best thing. Yeah. But then you look him up on social media and the guy's fat shaming people. Oh, man. And I'm like, I can't bring you here to influence our young kids. Like, and I called the guy and I told him. Yeah. And I'm like, you need to take that down, but you don't fit here personality wise. So honestly, I can teach you the science part. We can teach you to program. Yeah. We can teach you how to run a department. Yeah. But I can't teach you to be a good person or have a great personality. Yeah. So if you ever ask anybody that's ever interviewed, we just honestly have a spot open now. Yeah. And we've been interviewing a lot of people. And it's funny because they'll be like, wow, I've never had an interview like that. And we're like, good. Yeah. Because the first thing we need to know is what type of person are you? Can our staff get along with you? Like, are you a good person to put on the bus? And then once you get here, you may be good at this, but we already have a guy that's good at that. Yeah. What can you bring to the table to make us all better? Yeah. So I think that's kind of what we look for when it comes to hiring people and bringing people to be part of your staff.
I like that answer too, because again, like you said, we have so many resources these days. Like, why are people still messing up on the same old things? You know? Oh yeah. What's happening? But that's a really good answer. Okay, and then moving forward just a little bit, right? What are some resources that have had a big impact on you? You talked about your experiences and some of those internships, but as far as like books or conferences or podcasts or anything like that.
Oh my gosh, you mentioned podcasts. I feel like I'm just going to dinosaur myself here. It is so funny. Like, okay, so my boyfriend's a strength coach too. He's in the Denver Nuggets. Okay. And he is all into podcasts. I swear, anytime I call him, he's like, oh, Joe Rogan this or this podcast or that. You should listen to it. And I'm like, I don't know why it takes me back to 12 years old when my dad listened to NPR. And we would go on road trips, I swear. Like, we lived in Kentucky, middle of nowhere, like 45 minutes to a grocery store. So he wanted to make sure we were exposed to things. Yeah. So we drove to Alaska one summer and back. I don't know if it's a coping mechanism for the audiobooks he put on back when like tapes were still in cars or the NPR, but I go to sleep every time. Yeah. So it breaks my heart because I'm missing out on such a great avenue to get resources. Yeah. But it is literally like I go to snooze fest when everyone turns on, unless I know the person. Yeah. And then I'm like, okay, I'm so proud of that person to being honest. Yeah. The books, I would definitely say I'm big into like mentality books. Like the
Yeah.
science part, I need to know it. I have to know it because that's my job.
Yeah.
But I was a psych major before I flipped over.
Okay.
So to me, between the ears is so important, whether you're an athlete or not. So different books like I don't know if you've ever read the Habitude series.
No, I've heard of it though. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's so simple to read. Or like Who Moved My Cheese. I love reading books what coaches have written because why not read somebody's story and see what they did wrong or great and then utilize it. In a Pit with the Lion on a Snowy Day. That's great.
Okay.
Slide Edge.
Yeah.
I love that book. The Energy Buzz. Any of his books are phenomenal just because they're easy reads.
Yeah.
And it's such a simple concept that you can apply.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So honestly, anything that you can get your hands on, like I'm big on Chop Wood, Carry Water.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm so intrigued with the mind and the power that the mind has.
Yes.
But then there's also a book, The Art of War for Women. I read The Art of War and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Art of War for Women, phenomenal.
Okay.
Like women in the field and just in general, not just strength. Like we chop our legs out from underneath each other. I don't know why. It's instincts or just. But I think we can do such a thing about empowering ourselves, and that book really kind of shows you and brings to light that.
Okay.
But anyway, so I think any book you can get your hand on, whether it's science-based or, from a psychology angle, a nutrition angle, just educate yourself, honestly.
I love it.
And just continue to educate yourself. Don't ever shut that off.
Yeah.
I know we get busy, but like in the Slide Edge, it talks about 10 pages a day.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't do 10 pages a day. Do 10 pages every other day.
Yeah.
But it's just little things like that. And another thing, I downloaded the Calm app and I meditate.
Okay.
As you can tell right now, I'm wired off caffeine. I woke up at 5 this morning to go box in New Orleans.
Yeah.
And then I drove back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do this podcast. But in my mind, I'm like, I need to meditate before I do this. So the meditation piece too has been huge from a mental standpoint too. Okay. So I would say just do anything.
Yeah.
Like just get your hands on and just don't be afraid of growing. Even if you grab a book that ends up being what you constitute as bad, at least you put it into your toolbox.
Yeah. No, for sure. Okay, and then moving forward just a little bit, what are some quotes that you live by if you have any?
Embrace the process.
Okay.
I firmly believe in that because everybody's always waiting on the next big job.
Yeah.
The grass is greener on the other side. And they forget to live in the moment. I spent probably half of my career being like, well, I can't wait for this step, or living off a 5-year plan that I don't know. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, and maybe I could have gone to the beach with the other GAs one time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like certain things that would have made me a better person, which would have made me a better coach.
Yeah.
Instead of getting so caught up in the grind, and I gotta walk up hills both ways. Like, embrace the process, work your butt off, but enjoy life, man. You only get one of them.
Yeah, that's huge.
And then it leads me into my other one is like live your dash.
Yeah.
A lot of people in the past couple months, like, oh my gosh, past 6 months here, we've lost 5 people.
Wow. Okay.
In our athletics alone. And it just really kind of brought to life to me, like, this is a great thing we do when we get to pour into kids. I mean, that's my passion. I want to leave this place better than what I found it.
Yeah.
But you can't forget to live. You can't forget to enjoy the moments.
Let's go. Yeah.
Go take a hike.
Like,
maybe read a book for fun that's fictional. Like, just live and leave whatever you do better than what you found it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay. What is the best advice you've ever been given?
Ooh. Know what your why is.
Okay. I like that.
Literally know what your why is. Embrace it, accept it, and live it.
I love it.
Because once you know that, all the other stuff kind of just falls along with it.
Yeah.
You know why you're doing it, what motivates you. Mine is I want to impact people. I want to serve people. That's all I've ever known my entire life.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. And maybe that doesn't get me $1 million. Maybe that doesn't get me back in a big Power 5 job. Maybe I find myself in the private sector.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I do know everybody I come into contact with, I'm going to try to leave it better. And if not, I'm going to learn from it and then try again.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Okay. So in contrast to that, what's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Oh gosh. I love my dad to death. He grew up in a military family. I mean, my brother's in the military. I grew up with a bunch of boys, basically.
Yeah.
And he definitely wanted to make us tough. He definitely wanted us to be able to go out in life and conquer what we ever wanted.
Yeah.
But one of the things he always said to me is no blood, no tears. And that's such like a great concept, but at the same time, I think it kind of takes emotions and puts them in a bad connotation, like, oh my gosh, you can't cry.
Yeah.
Or, oh my gosh, you can't get angry.
Yeah.
Or you can't get that excited. And I think there's nothing wrong with emotions.
Yeah.
It's just what you do with them.
For sure.
How much power you give them in that moment.
Okay.
And I think for me at the time, I was like, oh yeah, it's making me tough. But the older I've gotten, like I have peace now.
Yeah.
And they say it, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if I like that.
Yeah.
Like, be tough, but like be okay with it being emotional.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was a little deep there, but there you go.
No, I like that. Because I also think, I mean, especially being in this profession, like people don't express emotion like in a healthy manner, you know, because you're putting up the walls and you're putting up the image that you want people to get. But like you said, we're all still human, so we need to, you know, in some aspect, share with people and reach out in somehow. So I like that.
I think mental health in this day and age, especially with all the social media and people discovering like your brain is just another muscle, just like your biceps that you want to do curls on every day. Like you got to exercise it. It is okay. We're humans.
Yes.
Don't lock that away. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
But let's teach ourselves, let's teach our athletes like how to use those in a controllable manner.
Agreed. Okay. And then kind of the last question here, what are some projects that you're currently working on? How can people reach out to you and follow your journey?
Oh my gosh. I mean, my door's always open. If you want to come down to Swampland, I'll take you to our swamp. We literally have swamp on campus.
Wow. Okay.
We'll take you on a tour. I'll take you on I'll take you on an airboat ride.
Yeah.
We'll take you to the best food places. You can come coach. So if anybody's ever in Louisiana, like in Lafayette, stop on by. We're the happiest city in the country. You can do that. You can follow me on social media.
Yeah.
I put a lot of my personal life and work life on there. You're going to see lots of pictures of Colorado.
Yeah.
I'm going to go visit the Nuggets a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, follow me there. I mean, if you want to reach out and call me, I'm perfectly fine with giving my cell phone number out. I mean, to me, it's all about giving back.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, like with this recent hire that we had, I responded to everybody, whether they got it or not. And I was like, thank you so much for applying. And one guy responded with, I've applied to so many jobs in the past couple of years, and nobody's ever responded back. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's wild.
I'm so sorry from our profession.
Yeah.
So I guess that's another thing. I know I'm throwing this in at the end, getting on my soapbox, but our profession needs to do a better job of remembering what it was like to apply for 50 jobs and only hear from one person. Like, respond.
Yeah.
Even if it's one line.
It's
like,
simple.
That will go a long way.
And that's just basic human decency, I feel like.
And what's crazy is the conversation that stirred from that with that individual. Like, now I'm bonded with that person. We may not hire him, but who knows how that opens the door. Which I made a phone call at another school, and I was like, hey, there's this guy looking for this. And I mean, there's just so many different ways. And I know we're busy.
Yeah.
But I guess, like, honestly, anything, you can find my email on the website. Anything you need, feel free to reach out. If I don't respond, email me again, because I didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah. No, I feel that. I love it. Go ahead. Sorry.
But thank you for I was going to say projects we're working on. Just continuing to grow our kind of staff here at Raging Cajuns. I want to start a nonprofit in the next 3 to 4 years to kind of help troubled teens.
Yeah.
So if anybody ever wants to reach out to give me advice on that, open book on that. And I'll probably turn pro in boxing if this Olympic thing doesn't work out. So just be on the lookout.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Coach, thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic. I love your energy, whether it's just the coffee or not. I love it. This has been fantastic, and I think it's going to be a great resource for a lot of people. So thank you for your time, and hopefully we can connect again soon in the future.
No, I appreciate it. Like I said, this is my first podcast, so thanks for letting me do what I do best, talk.
No problem. All right, Coach, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, have a good day.